Welcome to the Puck and Pigskin Podcast. Presented by Bravara Media. Just great sports fans talking mostly about hockey and football, sprinkled with a bit of everything else. Now, here's your host, a Flames fan with a Golden Knights backup plan, Jason Bizik.
All right, I am with two founding members of the SquadCast, Clark Munroe, Max Ritz. Welcome, gentlemen, to the Puck and Pigskin Podcast.
Oh, thanks for having us, Jason.
Thanks, Jason. Glad to be here.
I've definitely been waiting to have Clark because I've known Clark for a bit now, ever since I started tuning into Rod Peterson. Max, I've never interacted with you, I don't think. Are you part of the Rod Peterson show as well in some form or another?
The long and the short of it is, first of all, Jason, Clark is way overhyped, so don't worry about it. It's all good. It's I'm sure he'll disappoint in a myriad of ways.
I'm wearing Leafs stuff, Max. You know that's the key of disappointment. Is just
no choice but to disappoint. But yeah. No. Anyways, though, I guess that kind of speaks to our friendship and how things got going. Last summer, I took a student opportunity with Darren DuPont and his company, DuPont Media, which obviously is the production company behind the Rod Peterson show, and through that gained a very, very good friend in Clark Munroe. And the long and the short of it is I worked on the show in a few different aspects for the summer last year, and I believe 2020 it was, throughout the pandemic. And Clark and myself found that we were spending a good amount of time during the day talking about sports and debating sports, and said, hey, maybe we should probably use the technology around us and the great people at IKS Media and maybe create a spin-off show and something that could stay affiliated with the show. So while I'm not with the show technically today, I like to think I'm still with it through the SquadCast and what we've developed over there. So
still under the umbrella.
Yeah, exactly.
Still under the umbrella. Yeah, and for sure, Clark, wearing the Leafs hat definitely sets the bar low. So anything from here is going to be extraordinary.
Oh yeah, well, as Max says, I have what's the term? Well, you won't know necessarily from out in Calgary, but we have a very small hill here in Regina called Mount Pleasant, and yep. Max says that I have my standards are about as high as Mount Pleasant. So there you go. There's my standards. We got the warning out there.
So that means, I guess, for Leaf fans, right? So we've got about a 10-minute point, and then we can just exit. Hey, that's about it.
Yeah, pretty much. Perfect. I'll be bowing out after the first question for sure.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I'll have you guys know that I was born and raised in Regina, and I've sled many times on Mount Pleasant, and nearly broken my body several times too. So, which is amazing for such a little hill.
Oh yeah,
it's a dangerous one.
It can be.
All right, let's bust into some hockey talk, shall we? I think first we need to head to the busy week that it's been the last week or two in the NHL. Let's start with the expansion draft. I'm going to start with Clark. Clark, what are your initial thoughts of the expansion draft and what the Seattle Kraken look like so far?
Yeah, so me and Max did a 3.5-hour preview show, and Max, I didn't do the math, but I think we got about half of them right. We got probably 13 or 14 of the picks close or like basically bang on. But that's there's definitely a lot of surprises, I think, is what I was kind of consumed by. Obviously, it was funny because they all got leaked way earlier than the draft. So throughout the day, me and Max were just texting each other back and forth, being like, oh, okay, I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one. So there's a few. And I guess now that we've kind of gotten a week or two past it, you've seen some other moves because of it. And there's been a few of the picks that they've made that have just defected back to their old teams. Gavin Bayreuther from Columbus just seems like a waste of a pick. There's a couple other teams, I believe, where the same thing happened, where they picked the guy and then they didn't sign him, so he just took off or went back to his old team. There's a few kind of eyebrow raisers where it's like, why didn't they try to get at least a little bit more value out of certain picks? That's the biggest thing for me at this point. They got some good players, and I think they're going to be an interesting team. But I feel like there was some weird things going on that we might not know about ever with a few of the teams, where it's like, why didn't they select anybody else other than this one guy? Or why didn't they pick up maybe this big guy with a big contract? Why didn't they take him? It just seems like an obvious pick. But I think overall they had a plan. It's pretty obvious. and they appeared to have stuck to it and stuck to their values too, because we all know the rumors and the reports that came out were that they were asking for a lot for people to make certain side deals, and it didn't seem like they wanted to lower that value. So that was, I kind of admire that in a way, but we'll see how it all pays off in the long term.
Yeah, I definitely knew that a lot of stuff was going to happen after the fact, which is why I didn't pay too much close attention to what happened at the time. I actually only think I've seen a couple trades since then. I haven't really paid much attention to what's gone on with them. I love the Geo pick. I love the Eberle pick. Those are two of my favorite members of the Kraken right now. So, Max, what are your thoughts?
You know what? I can really only echo what Clark just said. At the end of the day, I think we looked at Ron Francis and the job that he did, and I think the biggest thing and the distinction that needs to be made from 2017, when the Vegas Golden Knights selected their roster, versus the Seattle Kraken in 2021, is they didn't have to play this economic game from the standpoint of what the NHL's salary cap landscape is going to look like for the next 3-4 seasons. So clearly, Ron Francis coveted cap space. He was going to weaponize it in as many ways as he could, and I think that's, again, like Clark alluded to, kind of the head scratcher there of why he didn't weaponize it more, and maybe why there isn't more picks in Seattle's pockets right now. They made the move, obviously, Tyler Pitlick going to Calgary for a mid-round pick. Vitek Vanacek headed back to the Washington Capitals for, I believe it was a second-round pick. And a couple of very, very small moves there. Mr. McDermott heading to Colorado again for a fourth-round pick. But these are all moves that we kind of expected to happen either before the draft or just after, not being things that were periodically kind of thrown into place a couple of weeks after the fact. So, I mean, clearly with some of the moves that Ron Francis made in free agency, bringing on Philip Grubauer, Jaden Schwartz, guys of that magnitude, he wanted some cap space to work with going into this free agency period with this class of players that certainly is not the weakest one that we've ever seen. But at the end of the day, I think their roster is rounding out nicely when you look at the Pacific Division and what it's going to kind of bring about this year in terms of competitiveness. You've got the Vegas Golden Knights hat on there, Jason. I think it's clearly their division to run away with, despite giving away Marc-Andre Fleury for essentially nothing. With that being said, though, I think the Seattle Kraken can certainly compete with what they put together thus far, and there's still quite a bit of offseason left. So it was a very interesting draft from a standpoint of not a lot of things materialized, I think, that a lot of people expected to, but Ron Francis clearly coveted the cap space and weaponized it in free agency.
Yeah, I'm definitely not too happy about Vegas giving away Fleury, and then Reeves is gone now too. Those are two huge pieces of that puzzle, for sure. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen to Vegas this season. Curious about your guys' standpoint regarding the Seattle Kraken look, the Seattle Kraken logo, the arena, the whole experience. Are you guys into it or not so much?
Well, while Clark is off screen anyways, I think I know exactly what he's going to grab. That tells you all you need to know about what he thinks.
He's going to grab a jersey. He's got a shirt.
There it is. I think you had that from the minute they announced the logo. Hey, Clark, as soon as you could order it.
This was a basically day one. They announced it, and there was a fundraiser going on where they were raising money for inner city kids in Seattle. And I was like, yeah, I'm jumping on board. I like this team already. I'm in. So I love it all. I think we haven't even seen the most of it yet. I think with Jerry Bruckheimer being one of the owners, and just the exciting, it's such a passionate city in terms of, look at all their other sports teams, the Seahawks, the Sounders, when the Mariners were good, it seems like 30 years ago, but that was exciting times. So Seattle, I think in general, is a great sports city, and to get a hockey team, I think they're going to get right behind it. And I just can't wait to see what they come up with. I feel like the Kraken has such a potential for this mysterious, you never know what's going on. And there's so much suspense with, a Kraken coming out of the water to grab you. And I feel like the comparisons they can make and the kind of translation they can make into a game day presentation, I just hope they knock it out of the park. I'm looking forward to seeing all the stuff they come up with. This, again, with Jerry Bruckheimer, one of the biggest movie producers in the world, I think he's going to have a field day with this and just have a ton of fun.
Yeah, no doubt. when I saw the videos that they produced and that they were putting out on social media, I thought, geez, this is some quality stuff here. And now that you mentioned Jerry Bruckheimer being a part of it, I was like, oh, okay, yep, that's why.
Yeah.
um,
And they got a lot of the like local celebrities involved. You saw it with the expansion draft, getting Marshawn Lynch doing some stuff and getting a bunch of Seahawks players and a bunch of the Sounders
They
players to
probably could
come
have
in
given
and
him a tutorial on how to pronounce some names, though. That might have been
oh,
Jonas Don Scully.
that was
Okay,
Sean.
that's
Yeah,
an interesting name. I didn't
Sean,
see
and
him on the
they could have
exposed
found
list.
I know Sean Kemp is a very huge man, but they could have found him a shirt that fit, for goodness sakes. Like, come on, guys.
yeah, they broke out all the huge stars. Hey, Macklemore.
Yeah, exactly. So
Oh
I'm looking forward to
man.
seeing how they can translate that into, a season long fan experience. And I think those fans are going to get real lucky with that team.
Yeah, for sure. So let's head to what happened after the expansion draft, and that was the NHL entry draft. I'm actually trying to bring up a list of the players that were drafted, and for some reason, Google does not want to give those to me. And actually, I didn't pay attention to the entry draft at all. I had a lot of stuff going on that week, and I was camping and doing all kinds of stuff. So I actually have no idea who we have picked here. Let's see. Who went number one?
So Owen Power, I have it open here. Owen Power.
Yeah, that's right. Owen Power did go number one. Yeah.
Yeah, to Buffalo. And, we on the SquadCast, our good buddy Joel Henderson came on. I'm going to say back in January, before the season was even started up. And we did a really early draft ranking with him. And he didn't have Owen Power at number one when he talked to us at that point in time. His number one was actually, I think at the time it was William Eklund, who went number 7. But his basic message throughout every time I talked to him in the last 6 or 7 months has been, this draft is complete. It's a complete scramble. Like, nobody's going to know who's going to go where because nobody has played proper seasons, truly. Some of the European kids got some decent seasons in, but the WHL was half a season and weird. Like, not all the players were there. For your listeners out in Alberta, for example, Cole Sillinger, who went, 12 overall to Columbus.
He was 12th.
He didn't play in Medicine Hat, even though that's where he played the year before. So there were several players in that same boat. Plus, a lot of 20-year-olds decided not to go play in the WHL. Plus, there was no European players. So it was kind of a weird year for everybody. And I just think it kind of threw off most of the draft rankings and most of the scouting opportunities. So I think Owen Power, as a 17 or 18-year-old at 6'6", 213, he exhibited a few good tools. And I think it just seemed like the safest pick out of the bunch because he seems more complete right now than some of the kids. And I think that's what Buffalo's decision was mostly based off of. I mean, he was ranked really high, but I think, some of the other kids, there's some question marks there with a lot of them because we just didn't see enough of them. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this draft class plays out in 5, 6, 7 years down the road. Are we going to see kids in the 5th, 6th, and 7th round end up being the best players in this draft? I think it's just going to be fascinating to kind of keep an eye on this draft for the next few years. Max, did you have anything you wanted to mention about any of the other top draft picks or anything like that?
Other than, I tell you what, Jason, if you bring up the University of Michigan Wolverines roster, about half of them were picked in the top 20. So, I mean, you got that handy.
That I did know.
For sure. But with Matty Beniers, Kent Johnson, there was a multitude of guys from that program. So certainly a fun college hockey program to watch for the next season or two if a couple of those guys return. But I think just like Clark said, and going back to Joel, he gave us some really good insights. And I think that the best analogy that he left us with was it was kind of like walking into an ice cream shop where there wasn't really a bad flavor. It was kind of take what you need, pick what you can get, because if you have a positional need, chances are there's going to be a good player there. They might might have some holes in their development based on what we've gone through the last year and a half and what they were able to accomplish off the ice as opposed to a regular season. But at the end of the day, there's going to be some really, really good players to come out of this draft. And again, where they slot, it's going to be very, very interesting in terms of overall performance and who's going to win this draft class with some of these picks. So I think if you had some quantity to work with, the Nashville Predators, obviously the team that I'm paying closest attention to, snuck up and grabbed a second first-round pick for the second time in their franchise's history. That's a good thing to do in
Carolina.
Yeah, it's a good thing to do in this type of draft when you don't necessarily know what's going to go on, right? So the more lottery tickets, the better. And especially in this draft, there's definitely some good players. It's just a matter of how's that development curve going to shake out long term.
And what do you know of the players that you selected? Fedor Svechkov and the second one was Zachary Leroux, right? Yeah, if that's how you say it. Leroux.
Leroux, anyways. Yeah, absolutely. From the Halifax Mooseheads, I believe. He was a very interesting pick just because the player comparable that at least I was reading a lot about was Brad Marchand. He's got some skill that can still be rounded out with some development at the NHL level, but he's got a snarl to his game. He's got that edginess that he's not going to back down from anybody, even though he's got a bit of a smaller, stouter stature to him. He's somebody that's going to play hard minutes, but also give you some scoring flair again if it can be developed. Fedor Svechkov, I'm very, very interested to see. This is the second year in a row where the Predators have gone to Russia, obviously picking Yaroslav Askarov the year before, hoping that he pans out to be anything close to Andrei Vasilevsky, his fellow countryman. I'm very, very excited to see that. But Svechkov, the number 6 ranked European skater coming into the draft, again, don't know much about him, didn't catch a lot of overseas action, but when it comes to David Poile and their European scouts, they're certainly not afraid to go overseas and see what they can get in terms of talent. And I'm really looking forward to see how they pan out, both of them as prospects. But again, this was a draft where I was excited to see them take a gamble, move up into the back half of the first round and grab another selection, because again, like I said, I think there's going to be some really good players and you don't necessarily know if it's going to be a guy that could lead the draft class in scoring, being picked at number 27 like Zachary Leroux, or again at number 19 like Fedor Svechkov. So I'm really happy that they're stocking the cupboards with a couple of guys that are well ranked and well respected in this draft class. And again, we'll see where they go from here.
Yeah, I was quite surprised to see the Flames add another Matthew Coronado to the list. 2 Matthews that will hopefully cause havoc now. Definitely a surprise there, but I'm happy that we got him because he primarily plays the left side, but he can also play center, so that's good. So hopefully he can add to our offense a little bit.
Yeah, from what I know about Coronado is he's an absolute machine. The guy just all he does is score goals, and he put up numbers everywhere he's been. So I think he got a pretty nice little player there for Calgary. Like I think. What is he? He's not the biggest player, if I'm correct, but I think he's got more skill than anything, and he's a right shot. I think he's a right shot, so I think he'll fit in really nicely.
Yeah, he's 5'11", but he's only 185 pounds, so he's tall, but he's lanky.
Yeah, so he'll be a really good fit, I think, with what Calgary needs. Because I'm not an expert on the Flames. However, what I do know from the Flames is I feel like they've lacked somebody who can play with Johnny Gaudreau. And when I say that, I mean Johnny Gaudreau is a playmaker, and he's been kind of put on lines with, two-way forwards for a lot of his career now. And I feel like Sean Monahan needs another play driver on his side in order for him to kind of maximize himself. So if you're going to keep those guys and they're not going anywhere, I don't know what's going on with Calgary this offseason, but if they're keeping those guys and, maybe not this year, but maybe in a year or two, Coronado might be a guy who can pop in and be one of those real good rookies for you guys. So I think that's a pretty good pick for them at that point in the draft. I think it's a really nice, interesting selection.
Yeah. So let's move on now to free agency and all the trades that have happened since then as well. I'll start with you, Clark. What's perhaps the biggest one that you noticed?
In free agency itself, there's literally like 140 signings. So it's like take your pick of the litter. I mean, there's so many things going on, and I think a lot of teams overpaid, frankly, on this day, and that does happen most years in free agency. But it seemed like this year it was like they were overcompensating for last year because a lot of teams, kind of players got underpaid almost last year or didn't get the long deals that they wanted. And this year, every team was like, well, we can dump a bunch of money to Arizona and we can just go do a bunch of stuff. So that's kind of, it seemed like that was kind of the theme of this year, is like making up for lost time almost. The one that like surprised me, for example, was Ryan Suter going to Dallas. Me and Max were talking about this last night on the SquadCast, where it's like, 4 years for him at $3.5 million. He just got bought out, for goodness sakes. So you would think that he might take a smaller deal than that, but clearly he still has value among the league. And I'm sure that there was several offers for him. He probably just didn't walk in Dallas's door and they just offered it to him. There's probably 5 or 6 people fighting for his services. So I think there's a lot of players, the older guys, they got paydays, and I wasn't expecting that. So I think without selecting a real single person, I think that was kind of my biggest surprise, was how liberal teams were with their money this offseason compared to since it was a flat cap, just like last year, we didn't see a salary cap increase. I was a little surprised that a lot of money got tossed around.
Yeah. Max, how about you? What was the biggest thing for you from free agency?
Yeah, for sure. I'll try and be quick about it. And again, Clark, you kind of nail it on the head. He must be in my head tonight. But I think you look at, again, the liberalness with the dollars, and I go right to Calgary for you, Jason. Blake Coleman at $4.9 million a season, coming off of 2 Stanley Cups, obviously adds a ton of pedigree, can put the puck in the net, but has never been above 20 plus goals-ish in his career. Again, $4.9 million. That's a cap hit to absorb. So, I mean, hopefully he can outperform that contract. And same with his line mate, Barclay Goodrow, cashing in New York at a number of 3.6. And I mean, you look at those guys who were complementary pieces on 2 back-to-back Stanley Cup winning teams in Tampa, and they got paid for it, right? So you look at it, I guess, some of those signings, and I didn't exactly have them slotting in at those dollar figures based on contributions, and obviously based on the dollars they were given, they're going to have some severely, I guess, stepped up impacts on their new teams. But again, it's the liberalness with the dollars. And I think if I'm to pick a team in terms of what I've really liked in their offseason, I really like what the Boston Bruins are doing. I know Clark is going to scald me for that, but when you make some acquisitions that they've made, a guy like Nick Foligno, a guy like Eric Walla coming over from Nashville, and then you shore up the crease when you're not too sure what's going on with Tuukka Rask. When you bring in Linus Ullmark from Buffalo, they clearly believe in Jeremy Swayman as his battery mate. And I think Don Sweeney's done some really, really good work in shoring up the Bruins' problems and what plagued them in their second round defeat this year in the playoffs. So when it comes to the Bruins, I really like what they've done. It's not a team I certainly pay attention to often, although it's my dad's favorite squad of all time, and he can't quite have the same in-depth conversations about them, but I like to update them on who they're signing and what they're doing. And at the end of the day, I really like Don Sweeney's offseason and what he's done over in Boston.
Yeah, and don't forget Taylor Hall also.
Re-signing Taylor Hall as well.
A decently cheap deal. And I think another kind of storyline for me, Jason, just to kind of put a bow on it, is not necessarily free agent signings, but some of the extensions that we saw. And we saw Braden Point get 8 years. We saw Zach Werenski get 8 years. Seth Jones. We saw Miro Heiskanen in Dallas get 8 years. Like, we saw a lot of these younger 25, 26-year-old players get locked up for
Cale
big
McCarr.
money. Cale McCarr got his money too, and among others. So that was another thing that I think it kind of set the tempo for the next wave, because we were expecting some of these guys to maybe have to take shorter term deals, especially like a Seth Jones, for example, whose play hasn't necessarily been increasing. It's almost been on a decline the last couple seasons. And he went out and got paid big time by Chicago. So that was, I think, another storyline that kind of grabbed my attention, was just the amount of money teams were willing to give all these young guys who in their own right are superstar players. Like, these are big name players and they're important players. But, it was just a little surprising considering the times that we're in and how cap strapped it appeared a lot of teams were as we started this offseason.
Yeah. Not a surprise that Braden Point got a paycheck, because the guy is a beast.
Yeah. He's pretty good.
Biggest surprise for me, I think, was obviously Marc-Andre Fleury going to Chicago. That was a huge surprise. Another huge surprise was that he's actually going to play there, when really clearly he has the option to just hang him up and say, thanks, boys. So I'm kind of excited to see how he plays in Chicago, although I can't be a Chicago fan. I just can't.
Well, me and Max had this conversation again on our show the other night, where Chicago has quickly kind of turned into a team that we almost counted out before the season started
Oh
last
yeah.
year. This year, all of a sudden, we're like, hey, hold on a sec. Like, they're getting Jonathan Taves back. Kirby Doc is coming back from injury. He's probably going to be full-time. Seth Jones, Caleb Jones, his brother from the Oilers, because they traded, obviously, Duncan Keith. They brought in Jake McCabe, who's been a solid defenseman for Buffalo through all those troubles that they've had. And it's just they've added a couple other little small pieces here and there. And it's like all of a sudden, look out, the Central Division, Chicago is back, and I don't think they're messing around this year. They're ready to go. They might not even be done yet.
That Tyler Johnson
Yeah.
guy can still probably
Tyler
play a little
Johnson.
bit too.
That's the other one I
Tyler
always forget. I
Johnson,
always
yeah.
forget about Tyler Johnson. Yeah. So they've added a good chunk of players to this team that are going to make a real big change in how that team is perceived. So I think look out for Chicago this year. They're I don't know if they count as a dark horse anymore, but they're like that team that I'm thinking they could surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy with Blake Coleman coming to Calgary. As I said, I think Markstrom's going to be pretty solid in net, and I'll take the Coleman contract at $4 million because they got rid of Gio's $7 million. So I'm all right with that trade, Coleman for Gio, any day. Gio is a great defenseman, but he's getting up there in age, and I think Sutter's putting all his chips on Markstrom, obviously.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, he is. Now I think who did they bring? They brought in Dan Vladar from Boston to be their backup, and I don't know a ton about Vladar, but from what I heard, they are excited about him, and I think that's more important than anything. If the Flames organization is excited about the player and goaltender, I think that's more important than our fan opinion on what we think of him. But he had some good games in Boston, I think. But I think he was also really young, and he was thrust into a role where they were dealing with some injuries, and I don't think he was ready for it. So if he can go in and sit behind Markstrom and kind of learn from him and take over a few games here and there, I think that's a much better role than being thrust into what he was thrust into in Boston for a little bit there.
Yeah, I'm not so sure if it's them being excited about Vladar or just being excited that they actually have a backup goalie now.
Maybe both. Column A, column B.
Yeah. So are you happy with the Leafs right now? What they did, what they didn't do? What are your thoughts on the Leafs going into the camp?
Well,
Camp's going to be starting soon, isn't it?
Yeah, like sooner than you think. I think at the end, mid to end of this month. So like we're getting pretty close. Early September, I think at the latest. I saw preseason games are at the end of September. So like we're getting there. But Toronto was dealing with a really hard situation this offseason where obviously Zach Hyman kind of wants some money. And rightly so. The guy's been heart and soul of the team for a few years now. So he definitely earned every cent that he got. And then there was all that drama around whether they would sign and trade him or not. And, I'm kind of okay with the fact that they didn't, because I think Edmonton was undervaluing the help that was being offered to them. And at this point, I'd rather, them maybe stand their ground and, push for some value on this than get a throwaway draft pick at some point. So overall, losing Zach Hyman's going to hurt, but what they were able to do with his money that they didn't have to pay him was go out and get 4 or 5 forwards that fit different roles that they really needed. And we'll start with Nick Ritchie. A lot of Boston fans that I've talked to didn't like Nick Ritchie by the end of the time he was there. He's a bit of a slower skater given his size, but I think what he brings to the Leafs is something that they haven't had, which is one of those just kind of bowling ball forwards that goes around and just knocks everybody over, and has the ability to kind of disrupt the game where, they've had Wayne Simmons this past year, but he's not an intimidating force. He's just one of those players you don't want to play against. There's a difference, I feel like. So Nick Ritchie, I think, comes in a middle six role on the team and can go around and throw some hits. Then they'll go out and, just kind of pick up some smaller pieces here and there that kind of fit a bunch of different needs. They've needed a penalty killing center for years. And they go out and get David Kampf, the Chicago Blackhawks, who's one of the better defensive centers for his age and for what he was doing there in the league. So that's exciting. He's not going to score a bunch of goals. He's not going to put up a bunch of numbers, but he fills a really badly needed role and helps our penalty kill. Andre Kasha is a guy, again, from Boston. He's had injuries his whole career. He's kind of a head case. We're not sure how his health is going to be, but when he is healthy, he's effective. So if they can keep him healthy, that'll be good. Then they just got, again, just a bunch of little guys here and there that I'm curious to see how some of them are going to fit into the roster. Their defense was pretty much all under contract as it was. And then the big fish that they went out and got was Peter Mrazek for the net. And him and Jack Campbell as a tandem is really intriguing because Mrazek's been a really good tandem goaltender throughout his entire career. You saw it in Detroit. He actually took over there for a couple seasons when they were still actually pretty good. And he had some really good numbers. Then they became really bad, but his numbers stayed pretty good. And then he ran into some health issues, of course. So again, he's one of those guys where I think if he stays healthy, he's going to drastically improve what Toronto was getting. I'm not saying I hate Freddie Anderson, but his numbers don't lie. He was having some struggles near the end of his time in Toronto. So if they can improve on that, and then Jack Campbell keeps his form from last year, he had some great numbers last year and provided some huge help in net. So I like it. I like it overall. I mean, I'm not blown away. I'm not running through the streets screaming, but this wasn't an offseason where they were going to add a huge name. It was an offseason where they needed to fill a bunch of needs, and I think they were able to do it for now. And we'll see. It's not over yet, and there's still a trade deadline that they have to load up for. So we'll see what happens throughout the season. But overall, I'm decently happy.
Clark, I cannot believe
Decently
you forgot
happy.
Michael Bunting. Come
Well,
on, man.
do you want me to name everybody they signed? Because they
Well,
signed,
I mean, you already did. So
no, Michael Bunting, Curtis Gabriel, Michael Amadio. Like I didn't name all those guys.
There we
I didn't
go.
want to waste a bunch of your time. I know there's a lot.
I think
signed a bunch
they
of
got
little guys.
I think they got a new usher too, and somebody at the concession stand.
Yeah, they overhauled their entire concession staff. Absolutely, it was desperately needed.
The nachos are going to actually have cheese on them this year.
No, they were
Look out in Toronto.
They were lacking.
What about you, Max? Obviously, the big news in Nashville was Pekka Rinne retiring. So, what are your thoughts on Nashville right now as they stand?
Oh man, I tell you what, how much time do we got? No, I'm just kidding. You know what?
I don't have I'm looking around for the Kleenex for you, Max. I can't find it.
This is I've dubbed a new term for the Nashville Predators this coming season as it currently stands, and we are going to be competitive-ish. This has been an off season where it's been an aggressive retool for David Poile. Obviously, Pekka Rinne retiring, it's the end of an era, and UC Saros has been handed the mantle, and unfortunately in a bit of a contract situation right now where he's filed for arbitration, and I'm really hoping the team does right by him and acknowledges that the only reason we got into the postseason last year is solely on his back alone. So I'm hoping that contract situation gets resolved because it's clearly the number one order of business that David Poile needs to get to now that we're past the entry draft and into free agency. So I'm really hoping that contract situation gets cleared up. Obviously, it's been a couple of long-term guys that were a big part of our core going into that 2017 Stanley Cup final run that are no longer with the team. Victor Arvidsson, a mainstay for 7 seasons. He gets shipped out to LA as he didn't seem to figure into the expansion protection plans of the team, pick up a 2nd round pick and a 3rd round pick, utilizing that 2nd round pick to move up in the draft and pick up Zachary Leroux, as we already talked about, and then have a third round pick for next season. And then comes the big bombshell of Ryan Ellis being dealt to the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for Nolan Patrick and Philippe Myers, and then promptly flipping Nolan Patrick to the Vegas Golden Knights for their first ever draft pick in Cody Glass. I tell you what, it's an off season of committing to a youth movement. And the thing that a lot of people I think are failing to recognize with the Nashville Predators that, again, I dubbed the title of competitive-ish, is they dressed the most rookies in the entire league last year with 11. They had some serious injuries throughout the entire season to some major pieces. Ryan Ellis missed time. Roman Josi missed time. Matt Duchene missed a lot of time. Philip Forsberg was out for a number of weeks. Like, there was a lot of pressure on these young guys in the system to really develop and develop quickly in a time where all was lost. I think we all remember it quite well on the top of TSN trade bait boards. It was Matthias Ekholm's going to XYZ place. It was Philip Forsberg might be getting moved to Toronto. It was this, that, and the other thing. And I think you look at the young pieces, Tanner Jeannot obviously earning a protection spot with this team. He had a great audition for a 15-game stint and played admirably in the playoffs as well. In addition to a fourth line that brought a lot of firepower and juice and entertainment each night. So when it comes to the Nashville Predators, they're really expecting these young guys that they leaned on heavily in the back half of last year on their run to getting into the postseason and giving the Carolina Hurricanes a run for their money, 4 straight overtimes, losing in a 6-game series. They're really counting on these young pieces to take yet another step forward and continue the development curve that David Poile sees as necessary for this organization. It's younger pieces, it's filling in the cracks around, and it's trying to find some upper end talent. And I really think that's where Cody Glass fits into this picture as being a guy that maybe with a change of scenery, having a full-time opportunity to be a second, possibly third line center to start the season, but for sure a middle 6 role. It's going to be very, very interesting in Nashville. And it's one of those things where it's hard not to be optimistic, knowing everything they went through last year and knowing that a majority of the pieces that were responsible for the success last year are coming back. They just may not be the most well-known around the league yet because of the amount of pedigree that they have in terms of games played. But I'm overall excited for the season. I think David Poile is not quite done yet. Obviously, the other kind of elephant in the room that needs to be acknowledged is that with those trades came a lot of cap space. They're still sitting with $20 million in cap space, and with that gives you options. So I don't think he's done quite yet. It's definitely not a commitment to a rebuild, but definitely an aggressive retool. And I think as the team currently stands right now, they are competitive-ish. So that's the synopsis on my Preds at this present moment.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they're going to continue to be Smashville or if they're going to be Crashville.
How long did you have that one written for, Jason?
I like it.
I had that in my head for like the last 10 minutes ever since I asked you the question.
That's all right. That's okay. We'll hang a banner when we get to the second round this year in acknowledgement that Clark's team can't get there. So
dad joke level expert.
I like it.
That's right.
So now that we've gone through all the moves and all that kind of stuff, let's hear your predictions for your teams this season. Clark, where do you think the Leafs are going to end up this season?
Last year I think I did the smart thing by putting them in second in the North Division, not letting myself get too far ahead of myself. This year I don't think I can get too far ahead of myself. They're going back into the Atlantic Division, and it's not going to be easy with Tampa Bay being in there. Florida is only adding and getting better all the time. They got Sam Reinhart over the offseason. So they've done a lot of things in Florida. Boston never wants to go away. So they're going to be, one of those pesky teams. And now that they're traveling again, going into Boston, they haven't had a ton of luck in Boston lately. And Montreal is not going to be ready to give up their title of winning the North that easy. So I'm not looking too far at more than that. I mean, there's Ottawa, Detroit, Buffalo, and those teams are not going to be like roll over and die teams. We'll see what Buffalo does. But Ottawa is going to be scrappy. We know that. Detroit is right, the best there is in Steve Yzerman. So I'm not putting anything by them. But I think, overall, they have a chance to finish third, I would want to say, in the division. I think they're a playoff team. We'll see what else they do. Again, I don't think that as this roster currently sits that they're done. I think there's something else in the works at some point down the road, whether it's a trade deadline acquisition or something along those lines. So I would say we'll see. But I think bringing back the entire blue line like they have, adding to their goaltending, changing it at least. We'll see if Mrazek can hold up his end of the bargain. But I think they've improved goaltending a little bit. And I think overall forward depth might be slightly stronger. And then we'll see. Their special teams was kind of a mystery bag last year. So if they can shore a few of those things up, I think they'll be a pretty strong team. I'm going to say third in the Atlantic, and I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, I'm a Flames fan, so I know Ottawa's scrappy, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Oh, God. What about you, Max? How you think the Preds are going to fare this season? Where are they finishing?
Oh, well, I tell you, as we sit on August 4th, very much like Clark, I have confidence that the Nashville Predators aren't quite done yet. But as the team currently is constructed, I'm thinking they're a fringe playoff team, maybe sitting that fourth spot in the Central anyways. When it comes to a wild card berth, I think that's possibly what they could be looking at as a 7th or 8th seed. That might be a little bit optimistic given how their depth chart currently looks. But again, with that 20 million in space, I'm very, very certain that they're going to find a way to add some sort of impact before the season starts yet. With it being, again, I know they're not in the running for Jack Eichel, but some sort of impact piece. Tampa still needs to shed a little bit of cap. I know that Alex Killorn has been a name that's been bandied about in Nashville Predators circles for a little while. Let's see what happens, I guess, over the next 6-7 weeks. But as it sits right now, I'm going to be, instead of being optimistic, I'll go with my brain here instead of my heart. And I'd say we finish maybe just outside the playoffs in a very, very competitive Central Division led by Colorado, Dallas, St. Louis, Chicago resurging, Winnipeg picking up a couple of really good pieces on the blue line. And that's really all I think they were missing last year. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a very, very tough division to compete in. But the Central was last year as well, with Tampa and Florida and Carolina in the mix, and Nashville found a way to sneak into that fourth and final playoff spot. I think that might be the ceiling for them this year currently as the roster is constructed now. But with that being said, I think right now they finished just outside the playoffs as we sit today on August 4th. And I'm hoping that changes with an impact acquisition before training camp starts.
Yeah, all right. I'm gonna say the Flames are going to finish. I'm going to say Vegas and Edmonton are going to battle for top spot. I'm going to say with the loss of Fleury and Reeves, I'm going to say Vegas is not going to beat the Oilers. I think Oilers will finish 1, Vegas 2. I think the Flames will finish 3rd in a playoff spot, and maybe even win a round depending who they're playing. But they're definitely not going to be a cup contender, I don't think.
It's really interesting. That Pacific Division, I'm telling you, is going to be one of the ones to kind of keep an eye on, because I don't think Vancouver's all that bad. I don't think that I think LA is coming around in their development path. And Calgary is, again, it's kind of one of those teams that we all thought they were going to be better than they were the last couple of years. So are they going to be better than we think they're going to be this year, or are they going to be kind of that frustrating team again that just doesn't quite get over what they need to get? So I'm not counting a whole lot of those teams out. I think the Pacific's going to be weird.
Yeah, I think the biggest factor is going to be Markstrom, obviously, because Sutter's going to ride him hard, and if he can stay healthy, I think Calgary will do really well. But it's going to be tough. That's a lot of hockey to play.
Definitely.
All right. Let me ask you guys about the CFL. CFL, of course, is firing up tomorrow. Are you guys big CFL fans, Clark?
I definitely am. I know Max is kind of on the fringe, but
I'm trying to get into it.
He knows more than he lets on.
So, Clark, being that you're in Regina, are you a Rider fan?
Yeah, season ticket holder. I used to work for them back in 2012. I worked for the team, so that was super fun. So yeah, I'm definitely wearing green and white come Friday.
I grew up in Regina, obviously, and I get asked all the time, so you must be a Rider fan then. I'm like, no. How the heck did somebody grow up in Regina and not be a Rider fan?
I don't know many.
So how are the Riders looking through training camp? I know they've had injuries have been plaguing them, most specifically Achilles injuries.
Wow.
Other than that, how are things shaping up?
I think they're bringing back a lot of the bigger names it's so hard, Jason. I think, as you know, for most teams in the league, it's been almost 2 full years now since we've seen a team fielded. So I think, fortunately for the Riders, they are bringing back most of their bigger names from that last season. The big ones: Cody Fajardo, Shaq Evans, Ed Gainey on the back end. They brought back Micah Johnson on the defensive line, so that's going to be interesting to see what he's doing right now, because he struggled the last time he was in Saskatchewan, in the sense that he didn't get the numbers I think we were all hoping he would get. Then he went to BC, had a nice year, and now he's back here. So I'm very curious to see what he's going to be able to do again on that defensive line. Overall, some of the injuries they had were going to be impactful players. Those Achilles injuries. There was Nelson Lacombe was our second overall pick, and he was probably going to be maybe not a starter, but probably a rotation guy, and he's out now. And I think one of their starting linebackers was one of the ones that got one of the Achilles injuries, and then a couple other guys that were probably going to play some roles on the team. So not ideal. And they also had Brandon Labatt, one of their longest serving offensive linemen. He's not playing this year, or he's not as of right now due to the COVID restrictions and other things. But so I think their offensive line is going to be kind of up in the air. We're going to see a lot of younger guys. They have Logan Furland as their starting left guard right now. He's coming from junior football. So again, we've seen good players come from junior, and apparently from all accounts, he's stronger than an ox. So we'll see what happens there. But it's going to be kind of a gamble. I think game one's going to be a big identifier for the entire league, just to see who's even in good shape anymore. It's going to be a really weird start to the year. I don't think it's going to be all that crisp. So I'm going to say the Riders are going to be maybe better off than a few teams, but I think there's going to be a lot of parity in the league this year, just because it's going to be a lot of new players to the CFL all finding their way at the same time. Whereas these vets, a lot of them had jobs. A lot of them weren't fully committed to playing football, only simply because they couldn't be due to the life's circumstances. They had to pay the bill somehow. So all these guys, they weren't training 24/7 like they probably would have been otherwise. So I don't know. It's going to be a complete weird year, and I'm here for it. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to lead to some mistakes, and that's the reason why hockey fans sometimes enjoy junior hockey more than pro hockey, because sometimes mistakes lead to excitement or big plays, and I think this could be one of those types. See a few more big plays because of mistakes on offense or defense or special teams. So we'll see. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to tomorrow night, the Bombers and Ticats, and then Friday, being back in Mosaic Stadium myself with my dad, watching the Riders again against the BC Lions. It should be fun.
So Max, how on the fence are you as a CFL fan? Have you picked a team at least?
Wow.
What I was going to say it's hard not to at least have your allegiances pledged to the area code that you live in. For me, I'd say if I were to pick a team, for sure it'd have to be the green and white and the Riders. And I don't know, to echo Clark's sentiment, I think he went through the entire roster there. I think the only name he didn't mention was the loss of Charleston Hughes on the defensive side of the football. And I mean, that goes without saying. It's a massive loss when you're losing the league's leading sack leader. For what is it now, Clark? 3 straight seasons? 4?
Yeah, I think it's 4 of the last 5 or 6 or something. Like it's
something
not
crazy.
It's
like
not
that,
even fair. Yeah, no, he's
but
another level.
Yeah, but I mean, to kind of wrap it up with a pretty bow, I'm going to be fortunate enough to be in the stadium as well on Friday night, and I'm sure Clark and I will reconvene in the pill zone for a quick Pilsner and a quick little chat. And I think at the end of the day, the best thing that I could speak to is just at least being a local guy and understanding the magnitude of having the CFL back. Like Clark said, it's going to be a lot of fun watching the quality of football that we'll see. I'm looking forward to getting into it, and Clark can attest to this. I'm much more well-versed talking about the LA Rams and the NFL than I am the CFL, but definitely if there's another league that's going to gain a little entry into my heart, it would have to be the CFL, just because of what it obviously means to every community around the league, right? It's the little engine that could, in terms of football leagues, that's been going for 100+ years strong now, and it would have just been a shame to see COVID wipe it out completely. So I'm really glad to see that it's back. We'll see what kind of football comes from it. Obviously, there's still quite a bit of talent around the league, and again, it's just going to be a matter of, okay, how are the boys going to handle a year and a half layoff since the last time we saw them in uniform? So I'm looking forward to seeing the football, and again, kind of just gaining a little bit more appreciation as the season goes on.
Yeah. Big, beautiful new stadium there, and they still serve that crap beer. God.
Hey,
you don't drink the beer, you drink the $23 Rise, Jason.
Yeah.
That's the key.
There is a craft beer corner, and that's where I usually head. So that's my go-to, is the local craft beer corner. I hope that's back, because it was a savior.
No doubt. So before we continue, I'm just going to ask you guys: do you guys still need to be off before 9?
I mean, I'm good,
got
Max.
time.
You've got the
time, yep.
schedule thing, so you're
I got a schedule, but it's loose. I'm having a great
Okay.
time, Jason. This is awesome.
Okay, because we're gonna dip now into the NFL. Not sure if Clark's a huge fan, but I know Max
we're good.
mentioned the LA Rams.
Clark can hang there too.
Hold on, I'll go
He
get
can
my
hang
other-
there
my
too.
other prop.
Clark,
So,
you don't need to go get your
he-
28-3 banner. It's fine. It's okay. Oh boy, there we go. There's the pain. You're a glutton for punishment, Clark. You certainly
Wow.
are.
Yeah, there we go. How's that?
There. You sure you don't want to cover up the Leafs jersey?
Well, I kind of am doing that with my face, so we're good.
So yeah, obviously the huge news was Tom Brady turning 44 yesterday. Insane. Guys doing stuff at 44 that I probably couldn't do when I was 24. What do you guys think about? Does he have another Super Bowl or two in him, or is he gonna start to tail off now?
Max, you go ahead.
I'm done betting against Tom Brady. When it happens, it's gonna happen. If it's this year, if it's next year, whenever it is, I'm certainly not going to bet against him until he starts throwing 3 picks a game and clearly doesn't have it anymore. By all accounts and everything we see, how he takes care of himself. I mean, I don't know if you can ever defeat Father Time, but he's certainly keeping the score close as he gets further on into this illustrious career of his. So I'm at the point where I'm certainly not going to bet against him. Obviously, the Bucks had a bit of a slow start last year where they were only a couple of games above 500 and then really turned things on route to their first Super Bowl, I believe, since 2002, 2001, whatever time frame that was. So it was great to see for that community of Tampa Bay. Obviously, they're now dubbed Title Town in Champa Bay, as it were, with all of the things going on there. If only the Rays if only Kevin Cash didn't believe in analytics and just let Blake Snell go a little bit longer, we could be talking about a city that's got so many championships, can't even keep count. But when it comes to Tom Brady, I'm excited to watch him play. At the end of the day, I've never really had anything for or against Tom Brady other than appreciating what he can do on a football field. And fortunately, my Rams haven't really been scorned by him too much outside of a Super Bowl loss. But it was a game where they kind of held him in check anyways back when the Patriots beat them in 2018. It was a very boring Super Bowl. If you were on the losing side or even on the winning side. But with that being said, I'm done betting against Tom Brady. I think for sure he's got another one in him. With that being said, it's when does he want to go off in the sunset with his beautiful family and play golf all the time? I mean, he's pretty good at that too, by all accounts. So like I said, I'm done betting against him and just looking forward to watching him play football again.
And Madden's not done with him either because he got a 97 rating on Madden. It just came out the other day, so they're not done with him either.
That's fair. That's a fair rating, I think.
Has to be.
I think he's going to go for 10, and I think if you consider that he's got 1 year at least left as a starter, then does he go to a team as a backup for a year or two and maybe win another Super Bowl or two?
I can't see it. I think he's going to be the type of guy who starts like he's going to be Brett Favre. He's going to go whatever team just will pay him some money at the end of his career, like the Jets or the Vikings or whatever it is. He'll just pop teams and keep getting the starting
The Raiders,
role
hopefully.
I got a theory about this as well too, you guys, because we all know obviously it's well lauded how much money Tony Romo gets paid to do what he does on TV. I don't know if you guys caught Tom Brady's address at the White House. That guy can entertain in front of a microphone as well. So whatever deal that Drew Brees got or Tony Romo got, Tom Brady's going to be looking at possibly well above his quarterback salary to be on TV and be on a panel in the nearish future when he decides to hang him up. So,
and Peyton Manning too. And we know how competitive Tom Brady is. And with all these quarterbacks in the analyst game, you know he's going to immediately want to be the best analyst of all of them and become the highest paid guy on all the best shows and all the biggest networks. And he'll be just as competitive for the next 10 years after he's done playing.
Can rebrand the TB12 into having a microphone in the 2 or something. Yeah,
he'll start his own network. Like he'll probably he has enough money now. He can probably buy ESPN for all we know.
Oh, exactly.
I guarantee when he's doing his analysis too, he's gonna have all of his rings on his fingers while he's doing it. And
Why
wouldn't you? Right? Why wouldn't you?
I would.
Let's turn to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The inductees this year: Peyton Manning, one of them. We just spoke about Peyton. Charles Woodson, John Lynch, Bill Nunn, a few others on that list. Peyton Manning obviously is the big one on there, and very well deserved. What are your guys' views on Peyton Manning? You guys a fan or not so much?
Yeah, so he was kind of just coming into the league when I was kind of getting into it, and all I can remember of Peyton Manning is just success, and that's it. Like I missed his I don't remember his first couple of years that greatly in the league. I think I was 8 or 9 when he started out, so I just remember him being dominant forever. And when I picture Peyton Manning, I want to like as weird as this is to say, like I picture perfection on the field. I know he didn't win a ton of titles, but overall, I mean, the guy led the league in yards every single year. He led the league in scoring every year. His offense was always number 1 to 3, somewhere in the top 3. And now he's doing his analyst thing. He's hilarious off the field. He has those awesome Papa John's commercials every time he's on Saturday Night Live. He's hilarious. So I think he was I think he was an automatic first ballot Hall of Fame type of guy. So I think that's a great pick.
Yeah, Clark,
How about you, Max? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you kind of hit it right on the head, Clark. Obviously, with what he did on the field, it goes without saying he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I think you look at the person as well. I think that's what a lot of people will kind of back him up in just he's a Hall of Fame player, obviously, but he's a Hall of Fame person as well. We see the sound bites, we see the TV cameos, and I think just because he played in the AFC nearly his entire career, if not his entire career, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't pay attention to Peyton Manning too much, just because he did grow up in the Tom Brady area and where it just how do you dominate the headlines from a guy that's having that much success in February, right? But for Peyton, and again, it's his off the field persona that always caught my attention, right? It was his cameo in Modern Family that stole a show, or like Clark said, Saturday Night Live. And then the football is kind of secondary to me in terms of how I view Peyton Manning. It's always when he's not in uniform, but I think the stats are indisputable. He's somebody that deserves to be in, without question. And when it comes to just the type of person that he is, I think that's the biggest compliment most could give him, is that they've never had a bad interaction with Peyton Manning. Even on his worst day, it might be some people's best day kind of thing. And that is the true mark of a Hall of Fame player, is if they are a Hall of Fame person as well. So all the best to him. And just the overall class. I mean, Charles Woodson, that's another guy that, I mean, underrated in terms of the defensive side of the ball, growing up in an era where it was offense. Well, he was a guy that was able to kind of balance the ledger in terms of his production on the defensive side of the ball. So that's another name that jumped out to me in this class that, again, is a very, very good one.
Yeah. And interesting that you mentioned Peyton Manning being one-upped by Tom Brady all the time in the playoffs, because my favorite player of all time was Dan Marino back when I was a Dolphins fan. And of course, being around with the same time Joe Montana was around, yeah, you don't win many championships. So
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
there's always that guy. There always is.
There's always that guy. You mentioned being a big personality and stuff on TV, because I believe this year they're also doing the 2020 inductees into the Hall of Fame. And on that list is Troy Polamalu, who of course is a huge personality and on TV and stuff. And what are your thoughts on him? Because he was a beast as well.
Yeah, I picture how scary those Steelers defenses were for so long, and he was the main reason it stayed consistent. You see that hair flying around all over the field. He always had that really aggressive, big hitting mentality, and with him and guys like James Harrison back in the day, and their shutdown corners that just didn't let anybody pass them on that team. It was such a good team, and again, he was kind of the linchpin behind all of it. He was such a huge part of it, and I love the fact that he got in as fast as he did. I think that's huge.
Yeah. So let's move to the players of today now. Lots of off-season moves and the NFL draft, of course. Max, where do the Rams sit now with everything done in the off-season, and they're in camp now and ready to fire things up?
Yeah, no, it's again kind of one of those tumultuous times. They just lost Cam Akers for the year due to a torn ACL. This was going to be a guy that, at least in terms of fantasy football rankings, was going to be a breakout star for a lot of people. And in addition to just for the Rams contributions as well, I was fully expecting him to be that guy that took the next step and kind of took the Rams from being a committee running back offense since the days of Todd Gurley, which it's kind of crazy to say since the days of Todd Gurley when it was really only just a couple of seasons ago, but it does feel that long with the shift in the backfield that they've had. But now it's Darrell Henderson Jr.'s team anyways, at least from the outset of the season. We'll see if they sign a veteran. I know Adrian Peterson's still out there for a 1 year, $1 million type of contract. I know his personality and his pedigree would fit very well in the LA Rams in terms of their branding and where they want to go. But they also have a couple of options. They drafted Jake Funk in the 7th round. They've got an undrafted free agent who our shout out to our good friend Craig Smith here in Regina. He was giving me a scouting report on, but for the life of me, I can't remember his name. But overall, the Matt Stafford move obviously dominated the offseason, right? Going from Jared Goff, who did have some very, very good success as an LA Ram, maybe was a benefactor of being in Sean McVay's offensive schemes and systems. Now Sean McVay has a true savant at quarterback, and I get that would be borrowing his words. Just praising Matt Stafford's football IQ, his natural ability. He had a bit of a run-in with his thumb in a helmet, which is kind of ironic because Jared Goff had the exact same thing and won a playoff game for us last year against the Seattle Seahawks with a broken thumb. So I'm hoping that omen is not going to come in threes and be done, but they still have John Wolford who proved that he could go in any case. But with being this far out from the regular season, I'm certainly not too concerned. I'm sure Stafford will be ready to go, and he's gone through a lot worse in his career and played through a lot worse nicks and bang ups. But overall, I really like what the LA Rams are going to boast. They obviously boast a couple of, as Clark alluded to when Madden ratings came out, Jalen Ramsey 99 overall, and of course my man Aaron Donald with another 99 overall rating. And I mean that, how do you rate those guys anything different? One of the top shutdown corners in the league, and then Aaron Donald anchoring that defensive line. It's in it to win it now. Time for the LA Rams as they don't have any more first round picks to give up, so it's definitely time for the Rams to get past that hurdle and get back to a Super Bowl and claim a W in it. It's boom or bust time for the LA Rams for sure.
Yeah. So Clark, we didn't get into how heavy of an NFL fan you are. Are you obviously an Atlanta Falcons fan, or what's your allegiance?
Yeah, Falcons, man. So I got into the Falcons back when Michael Vick got drafted, so I've been following them pretty closely ever since. I'm probably not as big of an NFL guy as Max is overall, but definitely into it for sure. The Falcons, particularly, are in a really weird spot in their franchise history right now because they've been so good for so long, but the last few years they've been pretty trash. They're definitely in a new cycle in their development path, and they've kept a few of their older guys that have been around for a while, but obviously my boy Julio has moved on, Julio Jones, among some other guys. So they're kind of like Max's Nashville Predators. Here we go. Here's a tie-in. They're doing a bit of a youth movement in Atlanta. They're going to put some of their younger guys in big situations. They just went out and drafted Kyle Pitts, who's the top tight end in the draft, and he's going to be exciting to watch. But last year, offense wasn't their problem. Last couple of years, the offense hasn't been their problem. Their defense hasn't been able to stop a nosebleed. So they got to figure that side of the ball out a little bit. And if they can do that, they might be okay. But they've been in a tough division, and now they got Tom Brady in their division. The Saints are never bad. I know Drew Brees is gone now, so we'll see how that team looks. I think it's Jameis Winston now who's going to be
look out for Jameis Winston, fresh off of LASIK eye surgery. The guy's going to actually be seeing who he's throwing to instead of throwing 35 picks a year. So look out for Jameis.
And with Carolina getting Sam Darnold from the Jets as their quarterback, who knows how they're going to be this year. So again, that division's always been pretty tough. There's always been at least 3 good teams in that division. They've kind of rotated who's bad at any given time. The Falcons have kind of been the bad team. I guess Carolina's been rough the last couple of years too, but we'll see what they do. I think it's just a weird time to be a Falcons fan. I just don't know what to kind of expect at this point.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you, Clark. I'm just kind of getting back into NFL again. I used to be a huge Dolphins fan till Marino retired. Then I kind of dropped off. Back into it now, and I've claimed the Las Vegas Raiders, and they're looking pretty good this season. I think we got Henry Ruggs the third is one of the best receivers that I've seen in a long time. And apparently he's doing really well in camp, running great routes and burning guys and making insane catches. So I think he's going to be a huge impact this season, especially if Derek Carr can actually throw the ball to him. Carr is a bit of a sore spot for me. He's kind of touch and go. Josh Jacobs is insane as well. I think he's going to do. I actually predicted Josh Jacobs to win the rushing race this season, but I may be biased.
Nothing wrong with that.
And he's got a chance.
And apparently they have a great defensive end in Yannick Nagaki, who coaches are saying is the best defensive player in camp, hands down. So I think they're going to be not a bad team this year.
I tell you what, Jason, too, you got probably one of the top 2 tight ends in the league in Darren Waller there as well. And that's a guy that, again, fantasy football wise, he's a guy that I'm leaning on heavily this year. I think he's going to have a big year again, like you said, as long as Derek Carr is fully healthy and connecting with him on a regular basis. I think the Raiders have a shot as well.
Yeah, I saw good things about him for sure as well. Yeah. Not to mention, once they have an actual full Allegiant Stadium, that place is going to be insane.
Looks like the Death Star. It's coming for you. Oh man, I tell you what, it's
I cannot wait to go to a game there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to maybe one day getting down there for sure.
Yeah. Well, guys, that's going to do it for the sports talk portion of the show. Let's just kind of give viewers a brief outlook on what your podcast is about, where they can find you, your socials, all that stuff. Kind of give a plug.
Yeah, for sure. So as you can see over here, we host the SquadCast, which again is kind of in the Rod Peterson Show umbrella of shows of the family, if you will. So I'm the producer of the Rod Peterson Show. Max, as he said earlier, was a summer student with us, and we had these great talks in the afternoons where we thought Max kept bugging me that we should start a show, and I eventually agreed to give it a run, and we're I think 40. So we run on Tuesday nights. We started on Mondays, but we were running into Monday Night Football, and it just wasn't working for anybody. So we switched over to Tuesdays. So we're Tuesday nights now. We have a full studio production. We go live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube every night. And you can find us on Facebook at the SquadCast. Just that's our page name. On Twitter, we're actually Team RP Show because we're still again under the Rod Peterson Show umbrella. So that's kind of our account, so to speak. And then on Instagram, it's at the SquadCast_. You can find all of our show previews and some of our clips over there and some other stuff that we have going on. I'm on TikTok personally, so I put a lot of our clips on TikTok as well, at Producer Clark. Jason, I think I've seen you at a few of my lives. Are you on TikTok, Jason? Yeah. So I've seen you at a few of my events, but I put a lot of our clips over there as well. So if you want to see some SquadCast stuff over there, that's where you can find it. Max, you have TikTok as well, and it's slowly growing. Max, you'll get there.
I'm busy building graphics at 9 o'clock, Clark. I haven't got time for the TikTok.
I know Max is a busy man, so I bug him that he should get more on TikTok, and when he has more time, eventually he will. But it's fun. It's for me, and I'll let Max kind of speak on his side too of a few of our other places you can find stuff. But for me, it's just a really fun place to kind of go and connect with viewers. Interact with some really cool guests that we've been able to come on, and obviously with my connection as the guest booker for Rod Show, we've been able to gain some really good friendships there as well. So it's been super fun, and it's given us, me and Max, a chance to kind of grow some wings on our own and kind of do our own thing a little bit and seek some new opportunities for ourselves. And I think there's more to come. We're still growing, and obviously with the pandemic, we started in a pandemic. We've come out of it now. So it's crazy. It's crazy to think of where we started and how far we are. We're almost a year into the thing now. So we're 2 months away from being a year into it. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah. I'll also link all of your socials and everything in the description of the video. Max, anywhere else that Clark did not mention that where we can find you or him or SquadCast?
No, I think he pretty much hit it. Yeah, at the end of the day, like I said, Clark's built quite the following over on TikTok. I know I enjoy a lot of his videos when I can catch up to them. I tell you what, he's just a machine. He just puts them out like crazy, and it's a lot of fun to watch the market that he's built over there and the fan base that he's connecting with. And at the end of the day, it's still something that I enjoy being the watcher of it, and working on a couple of things to see if I can maybe open up some time in the day to join it, because I know how much fulfillment it brings Clark, and getting to speak on his passions. And at the end of the day, that's just what we love doing. And that's why we have a show on Tuesday nights to deep dive and go beyond the box score, as it were. And at the end of the day, it's just a great friendship we developed in a very short amount of time, connecting through sports. And I think that's the beauty of sports, is the deep lifelong connections you can build through them, being a fan, being a player, being really anything interconnected in the vast wide world of it. And we just like to talk about it on a weekly basis and share that love and connection with our fanalists. So at the end of the day, it's again leading us to great opportunities to speak with people like yourself, Jason, and then we get to yell at each other once a week, Clark and I do, about how much the Leafs and the Predators suck. And it's a lot of fun. No matter how many times you do it, it's a lot of fun. So
I think that's the reason why so many sports podcasts are around nowadays, because guys just love talking about sports.
Well,
100%.
Exactly. And especially since the pandemic started too, a lot of people lost their outlet to have that social interaction. And with technology advancing so much, it's with programs like StreamYard, like we're using tonight, and other things that people have at their disposal. It's really convenient now just to kind of start one up and find your own voice. And I think it's really fun for a lot of people to be able to do that now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I feel like Find Your Voice. Wasn't that a Hillary Duff movie back in the day, Clark?
Yeah. Actually, I might go watch it after this.
There you go. Good stuff.
Oh man. All right, guys, it's been a blast. I know Max, you got things to get to, and Clark, you probably got a kid to get to, or at least a wife maybe. So
I got an 8. No, she's at work tonight. So I got my 8-year-old. I got to get to bed. So I'll get that done right away here.
Yeah, it's been a blast, guys. Thanks for coming on, and we'll definitely do this again.
Thank you.
For your time, Jason.
I'm in at least. Max is probably. I'll speak on behalf of Max. He's in too.
Always.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you, Jason. You too.